Greetings, comrades, and welcome back to another episode of the Comrade Cast. And I have some very good news. As I talked about in the last episode, I had been coming towards the conclusion of some schooling and some technical skills that I've been building up, and I have successfully completed, at least for now, the courses that I was aiming to complete and gained the certification that I was aiming for. So now that it's over, I finally feel comfortable talking a little bit about what the hell I was doing. I'm gonna have a bigger video about this coming up pretty quick in the future, but basically what I had been aiming to do was evolve out of a career in more traditional law enforcement into something in the cybersecurity realm. So I went and I studied and I got my CompTIA Security Plus certification, and I'm hoping to use this new certification to move into that field. In addition to cybersecurity and the necessary components to study it, things like network architecture, encryption and decryption, protecting data in transit, all that wonderful stuff. In addition to learning all of that, I also spent a considerable amount of time learning how to code. Right now I learned Python. It seems like the best beginner language to learn. And honestly, I took to it very well, a lot better than I thought I would. I guess I have a pretty good mind for this kind of stuff. One of the things that really helped me, I feel like, learn to code and excel very quickly at coding was actually the amount of time that I spent studying other human languages, because I had, for a very long period in time in my life, thought that coding was more pure mathematics. There's no question some math involved, but it's not really you have to do the math. What it more is math as an expression of what you want a computer to do. And similarly, when people are studying new languages and beginning to pick up new languages, they get this impression that learning a new language is like math, in the sense that if I just replace the word with whatever the language I'm learning's word, then I will have the same expression, right? It's not an exact, I pull out this word in the English sentence and I put in this Japanese word and then it makes complete sense now. That's not the way language works. Language and understanding language is more about understanding how you can express the idea in one language in another. And this fundamental way of thinking really helped me when studying coding languages, because I was asking myself, what is the way that I can get this message to a computer? What is the language that I can write to send this message to the computer to help it understand the idea in my head and for it to execute that idea for me? The one way, though, human language and computer language is extremely different, and it's still probably the part of coding that I have the hardest part with, is coding is obviously extremely detail oriented, and you can't miss a single beat, right? You can't miss a single command or a single line of code or mess it up, because the program won't run. The computer won't understand what you're trying to tell it to do. Versus when I'm talking in English, if I leave out an or a the, or I misplace an I for a me or something when I'm speaking, you might turn your head at me. I'm sure you've had these experiences when you're talking to someone who maybe is learning English as a second language. You know, they don't always get 100% of the beats, but they get 90% of the beats, and that's more than enough for you to understand the idea that they're trying to convey to you. Not so with a computer, because the difference between a square bracket and a curly bracket, that's a world of difference for a computer. And if you don't get the right commands, the computer will have no idea what you are trying to tell it, or it won't be able to execute the functions that you're trying to give it. So 90% isn't good enough. 99% isn't good enough. It has to be 100%. It has to be 100% exactly right in terms of the details and the language that you're using to convey this message to a computer. And that's probably the hardest part for me. Anyway, enough about that. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, but needless to say, I'm pretty happy. I've been studying for this for a long time. I've been devoting a lot of my time and energy into this, and I am finally happy that I can just take a breather and let some of that knowledge just sit for a little bit, rather than spending all of this time trying to remember, oh my God, what is the difference between a network attached storage and a storage area network. It's nice to come up and get a breather and be able to think about other things for a little bit. And of course, it's nice to have the free time to once again move into some of my more extracurricular activities. But needless to say, a lot of my free time and attention recently has been spent trying to exert enough energy just to get over that last hurdle. And now that I'm done, I rested on my laurels for a couple days, and it's back at it, back to business as usual. Although I do feel like a little bit like the dog who's caught the car. What do I do now? One thing I don't want to spend too much time, but a little bit of time, is talking about why I decided to make this movement in my life. One of the reasons is, as you guys know, I got a couple kids, I'm getting older, and the job that I work is a more physically demanding one and a dangerous one, and one of those ones where you could get injured at any point in time. And personally, I don't want that. I don't want to be injured. I don't want to leave my kids with an injured father. It was time to start thinking about moving into something that is a little bit less dangerous. And when it came to various skill sets out there, in-demand skill sets that I was looking at and trying to mesh those with my own skill sets, eventually ended up on cybersecurity as the direction I want to go. Although overall, I would like to get into AI at some point, but that's further down the road, one step at a time. But another reason I chose this, it's because I at least personally predict that it's going to be a pretty resilient sector of tech. I know tech has been having some issues lately, but the thing about cybersecurity, it's something that everybody wants, whether you're an individual, you're an organization, you're a business, you're a nonprofit, whatever. It's something that is going to be valuable for you because you're going to have sensitive data and private data that you want to protect. And not only that, I also think it's going to be one of the areas of tech that will be slower to be infiltrated and overtaken by AI. And the main reason is because I think that people are going to be much more hesitant in letting AI protect their data rather than an actual human being. I think people are going to be much more comfortable for the foreseeable future with having a human being actually at the end of the line there overseeing what's going on rather than an AI or some sort of program. There's always going to be AI tools, but they're still going to want to have a human running the show or multiple humans running the show at the end of the day. So we'll see if I'm wrong, but obviously I'm hoping that I'm not. So anyway, with all of that out of the way, I would like to actually talk about what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to do a good old-fashioned Comrade Cast election roundup. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and this one's going to be a real humdinger because we have had a shit ton of elections that have just happened, and it's going to be a lot of fun talking about them, some of them good, some of them bad. And not only that, we're going to talk about the big upcoming elections as well. So with that little intro out of the way, let's jump right into what we're going to talk about today. And there is a lot to talk about. We're going to go over the first of our series of elections. The first one that we have was the 2024 South African general election. And this one was held on the 29th of May, 2024. So the very interesting thing about this particular election, you know what, let's move me over here for now. But anyway, the very interesting thing about this election here is that the major party in South African democracy is called the African National Congress. A lot of you guys, being political junkies like yours truly, probably familiar with the ANC. They have been ruling in South Africa for quite some time. In fact, this year would have been their 30th year of ruling with a straight majority coalition in the South African Parliament, I believe. I think they were first elected in 1994, and they have been ruling the country ever since apartheid was officially abolished. This is, of course, the famous party founded by Nelson Mandela. However, this election delivered for us the first time in 30 years in which the ANC will lose its majority coalition. It still won the election pretty comfortably. As we can see, they got a full 40% of the vote, finishing with 159 seats. but that is down a substantial 71 seats from the last election. Next, we have the Democratic Alliance. They are the main opposition party within the South African government. They're like right-wing economically, left-wing socially type of party, generally focused in around Cape Town and generally seen as a party which focuses more and caters more towards the white minority within South Africa. And that being said, they just held their own in this election, really. They only got 3 additional seats. But the major shakeup here is our next party, leader of the MK. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of this party, but it is led by the former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, who was removed, I want to say it was in 2019, it might have been a little bit earlier than that, by the South African government on various charges of corruption. And Buddy just pulled the old Bender trick where he said, "You won't let me in my political party? Fuck it, I'm going to start my own political party with hookers and blackjack." And that's basically what he did. This political party's main purpose is to basically advocate for his pardons on his various charges of corruption. It really has no other purpose besides promoting Jacob Zuma's pardon. That's it. That's its entire political platform. And he managed to scrape out a full 14% of the vote, which translated to 58 seats in the National Assembly. This party is predominantly centered around the Zulu ethnic demographic, within South Africa. And Jacob Zuma has already come out and said that he's not going to work with any party unless they offer him a presidential pardon. And the ANC has basically said, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not on the table for us. We're not going to pardon you basically after we're the ones who kicked you out of our party and started the corruption investigations. So he's basically really the main reason why the ANC was not able to pull off a majority in this election. Jacob Zuma's party was enough to grab enough seats and votes away from them to at least obliterate their majority for the first time in most of our living memories. And then after that, we have the Economic Freedom Foundation, which is a Marxist-Leninist party, one of the few political parties who I would deem even more radical for yours truly's taste. And ultimately, they ended up with a worse showing with less than 10%, losing 5 seats, ending up at only 39. And I don't think that the ANC is going to create a coalition with them either, mainly because they are quite radical and they are quite extreme. And I don't think that they're going to be able to work together. And then lastly, at 17 seats and 3% of the votes, we have the IFP. This is a small territorial party. The Inkatha Freedom Party, a sort of a nationalist conservative party for an ethnic group within South Africa. So long story short, looking at these results here, let's look at the map real quick so you can see where the votes are spread out. You can see in Cape Town in the south, that's where the Democratic Alliance does really well. ANC pretty much does very well in the rest of the country. And then now we have in the Zulu part of the country, we have Jacob Zuma's new party was able to secure that province pretty handily. So where does this leave us for politics in South Africa? Who is going to be ruling the country moving into the future? It still appears to be the ANC, and they're going to have to work with at least one other party to get this done. Personally, and odds-on favorite are going to be the Democratic Alliance. This will bring the Democratic Alliance potentially into the ruling coalition of South Africa for the first time. So obviously this would be a huge breakthrough for them. This would be a huge step forward for them. Like we mentioned before, they're not going to work with Zuma because he is demanding a pardon, and ANC is not willing to do that. Probably not going to work with the EFF because, again, too radical, too extreme. So really that leaves the DNC as the, not the DNC. This really leaves the DA as the last viable alternative. None of the other parties have enough sway, have enough power to be able to lend their power to the ANC and form a majority. But as I'm recording this, in fact, the deadline for South Africa's president is for them to figure out what the heck they're doing and decide on a new president is coming up very shortly. And I won't read this whole article for you. Basically, there's nothing. It was going to do a quick refresh because there might be some updates as we're recording this episode. But right now, there's nothing. Basically, there's no deal, nothing on the table. So who the heck knows exactly what we're going to see coming out of this, but we should have some sort of resolution very soon. Now let's move on to the Indian national election, which overtook a period of time starting on April 19th to June 1st. As you guys may know, Indian democracy is a massive undertaking. The country is now the world's most populous country, has over 1.5 billion people. Getting so many registered people to vote is quite a task. So basically, India will go through elections in phases, and then the entire results will then be unveiled over time, over a set period of time, and then off we go. Some places vote earlier than others, but even if you voted in one of these early constituencies, you're not going to know the results of the entire election until everybody's all voted and everything's all said and done. So as you can see under our registered voters list here, almost 1 billion, just shy of 1 billion registered voters. Absolutely incredible. And of those nearly 1 billion people, 66% just under came out to vote in this election. So what exactly happened? The biggest shakeup for Indian politics in this election, as you can see, is this alliance right here, the India Alliance, which stands for the Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance. It's a very big tent, massive coalition of parties, and all of these parties really came together with very different political goals and ideologies and perspectives, and they all came together basically with the hope of beating Modi, who had very easily consolidated a lot of power, political power in India under his BJP, Hindu Nationalist Party. And this is the first time that the India coalition has come together, and it unfortunately did not defeat Modi, or the Modster, as his friends call him. Unfortunately, they did not defeat the Modster, but they delivered a pretty serious blow to him. This would have been historic for him if he had gotten 3 terms consecutively, increasing his vote share. However, this is once again a pretty big blow to him. He went down 63 seats, and this was enough to take the majority away from the BJP. However, his coalition, his large alliance here, the NDA, which this stands for, the National Democratic Alliance. This is the more right-wing alliance that Modi and his allies have. So this alliance here was able to garner together enough votes to get a majority. So he's going to have to lean on some of his more regional allies to govern this time. He's not going to be able to do it all himself. He can't do it all himself anymore. And that, at the very least, is a pretty big win, at least for people who want to see democracy in India continue. As you guys know, I think India is a country that has a very bright future, but I do think its young democracy is in peril. But after seeing the results of this election, I do feel a lot better, because not only did we see a pretty successful attempt for the opposition to coalesce in Indian politics, we also saw the Indian population come out and pretty substantially say that no, we don't want this kind of coalescing of power under one party, under one person. We still want our power to be at least divvied up somewhat between different parties. So it's going to show Modi that there is limits, the Modster. So it's going to show the Modster that there are limits to his power, that he cannot become a dictator of the country, which a lot of people, including myself, were worried about. But just to show you guys here before we move on, you just see the regional results here. Like, India is just such a massive country with so many diverse places and so many different political parties. But let me just show you guys here the crazy scale of this India coalition when it comes to alliance. Here we go. So here's the NDA. As you can see, the BJP finishes very well, very comfortably, but still losing 63 seats, but still comfortably on top. So yeah, they're going to have to rely on mainly these two particular parties, Janata Dal United and the Telugu Tisam Party, both of them, again, who are more regionally located parties within India. But to move to the India coalition, as you can see, it's just a huge, massive swath of different parties here. It was quite a coalition coming together. But it shows that such a coalition can certainly dent Modi. And thankfully, this kind of denting will make sure that next time that things come around, Modi won't be able to consolidate as much power as he could have. Moving on, we had the 2024 Mexican general election on June 2nd. Not much to say about this. Pretty happy with this result. We have basically the Morena party, pretty left-wing party, cruising to victory in Mexico. This is the party which is basically the successor to the previous president, Obrador, or as people call him by his sort of acronym of his initials, AMLO. So in Mexico, you get, I believe it's 1 6-year term as president, and then you're done. Obrador, elected in 2018, finished his term, and now his successor for the Morena party, a woman by the name of Claudia Sheinbaum, also happens to be a Jewish woman, was very comfortably elected in the Mexican general election. We'll go over these results. Got just under 60% of the vote, just under 36 million votes. As you can see, the party behind her, the PAN party, the National Action Party, not even close, not even in contention with 27% of the vote. And we can see regionally, Morena cleaned up pretty heavily, but we can see that they were most heavily supported in the southern parts of Mexico. And the reason for this is because one of AMLO's biggest policy pushes was to create a lot of infrastructure, create a lot of opportunities in the southern parts of Mexico. The parts of Mexico that are close to the United States are in a much better economic position. The South, however, had been neglected for quite some time. And one of AMLO's big policy pushes was to do a crap ton of infrastructure spending in the region. One of the things he's even trying to do is build an international corridor to ship goods across that thinnest part of Mexico to compete with the Panama Canal. I don't know if he's going to get there, but the Panama Canal, if you guys don't know, is actually in kind of some serious trouble. It's struggling to keep up with the capacity that it needs to put ships through, and people are looking for other alternatives. Sheinbaum has pretty much said, I'm going to continue, by and large, AMLO's policy. The one thing that she looks like she's going to be making some steps towards, which is, in my opinion, AMLO's biggest misstep, which is doing nothing or very little towards the cartels in Mexico. The cartel problem, to me, is the last issue that Mexico needs to resolve to become a really great country. I said before, I think Mexico has a lot of great things going for it. It's got a lot of positive things in its future, but the cartels are just such an anvil weighing down the future of Mexico that it has to be dealt with. And AMLO definitely didn't do enough to deal with that problem. It got worse under his tenure. One of the things that Sheinbaum has said is that she's going to try and replicate what she has done as the mayor of Mexico City, which is that she increased law enforcement substantially in Mexico City, and this helped decrease the crime rate considerably under her tenure. She says she's going to try and replicate that experiment, that type of policing across the country. I hope that she will be successful. But yeah, obviously pretty happy about this election result. Not too much to say about it. Pretty decisive one. All luck goes out to the new president of Mexico. And now we move on to the proud country of Belgium. My Belgian boys, I speak out to you now. Like I've mentioned, for whatever reason, this channel has had a very oddly high percentage of Belgian viewers for quite some time. I don't know why. We have a lot of people from Belgium that tune in. So out of respect to you, my Belgian brothers, we are going to talk about your recent election. And unfortunately, unlike the Mexican election, this one does not feel quite as good. We have basically a right-wing breakthrough and a collapse of the center of Belgian politics. And we do have at least some bolstering of the left. Particularly, we saw the Marxist-Leninists, the Workers' Party of Belgium. We saw them do pretty well this election, but unfortunately it wasn't well enough, or we had a couple of pretty nasty parties here. We have the New Flemish Alliance and the Vlaams Belang. I'm pretty sure I Nailed that one. It is a Flemish nationalist, Eurosceptic, and right-wing populist political party in the Flemish region and Brussels, capital region of Belgium. So anyway, these two parties basically came out on top in this Belgian election. And then coming in behind them, we have a French liberal-speaking political party, but it's traditionally like a centrist conservative party, right? One of those soft, small c conservatives. And this was, and a lot of people, and let's be real, it's not a good result for the left, but this result happened mainly due to a collapse of the center. We have a lot of the centrist parties just completely imploding here. We have the Open Flemish Liberals and Democrats, a political centrist party or center-right party, down 2 seats. We have the Green Flemish Party, and these were the other guys that got totally smoked for the Green, down 10 seats, down 2 seats. And then most of all, or another one, we have the Social Liberal Regionalist Party, down a seat. And then we had the Socialist Party, down 4 seats. All went to the Workers' Party. But as you can see, right, we have the Greens and the centrists collapsing in Belgian politics, and that is in benefit to both the extremes of the left and the right, but certainly more towards the right end of the spectrum. After this result, basically the Belgian prime minister or president, I can't remember which one it was exactly. Anyway, basically, I believe, it was the Belgian president comes out and he resigns in shame, basically. So we don't know what's going to happen as a result of this election, but a lot of this is coming in the aftermath of our next big election that we're going to talk about, which is the European parliamentary elections. This was the one that's happened on June 9th, so just a couple days ago. This is the one a lot of people are talking about. I am just not giving a shit about the European parliamentary elections. I've always thought that they were kind of a joke. And the reason you got a lot of weird things in these elections is because they're a joke. So what we really saw in this election was a collapse of the center and the center left. And this really benefited, of course, the center right, who is now firmly in the dominant position in the European Parliament. That's the European People's Party, and they ate the lunch of the Progressive Alliance of Social Democrats and the Renew Europe. They're a liberal, pro-European party. And then, of course, we have the European Conservatives and Reformists. These are the Eurosceptic, Reformed UK types, and they gained considerably plus 14 seats. Between the center-right and far-right coalitions within the European Parliament, there's no question that they're absolutely in the driver's seat. Another area we saw a complete collapse is in the Greens. Once again, the Greens losing 21 seats. The Liberals and Greens are just getting completely smoked right now. And one of the things that I think that at least should, or at least for me, differentiates more liberal and green-leaning types from someone who's like a far-left socialist communist in that ballpark like me, is that for me, still at the end of the day, everything boils down to economics and how are we using our economic system and distributing our resources to get the maximum benefit for our people. Much less concerned about ecological considerations, which Greens are very concerned with, and much less concerned with identity considerations, which liberals are concerned with. And that's not to say that we aren't concerned with these, because there's a reason we come together for these political issues a lot of the times. It's just more so that we have other priorities and we're putting other foots forward when it comes to presenting our politics, putting other feet forward. I don't know. Hopefully you guys understand what the hell I'm trying to say. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your identity is, doesn't matter what your ecological leanings are. At the end of the day, we increase people's quality of life through decreasing cost of living, getting better access to better quality healthcare, access to better quality housing, access to realistic transportation. These are the kind of things that, regardless of where you fall, are going to vastly increase the quality of your life. So these are the things I like to focus on more when discussing politics. Regardless, I do think that what is really happening is something that I've worried, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we move into the last part of our show, which is going to be covering the U.S. election, is that the kind of liberal status quo that we have is crumbling. It's been crumbling for a long time. It's managed to find new and inventive ways to continually keep itself going, but sooner or later it is going to crumble, and political parties and entities that are attached to it are going to crumble with it. And this is why I've really been frustrated with the political discourse for a long time. And it's part of the reason why I want to add my own voice to the political discourse, is because I just hate this idea that it feels like our only choices right now are the ever crumbling sort of neoliberal status quo, or this crazy right-wing populism, nationalism that has emerged in response to the crumbling status quo. That's why I, as a left-wing person, want to try and find our own third left-wing alternative to the status quo, something that people can flock to, because it's getting harder and harder to defend that neoliberal status quo, regardless of how awful the right wing is being. There's going to come a point when people are going to choose them over what we have now. And if we don't come up with a realistic political alternative that grabs people's attention, that grabs people's passions, that ignites them, that fires them up, if we don't find a way to do that outside of being like, we got to protect what the status quo is, it's going to be very damaging for the left wing politically long term. And another reason I want to talk about why I think we're seeing some of the success in some of the far right or further right wing party success in Europe is that a lot of these leaders, they can come in with, they've seen in American politics, the kind of policies that resonate with people in their base. However, they can come in and copy those politics, copy those policies that they've seen someone like Donald Trump emulate in America, and be able to emulate them without the serious political baggage that a figure like Donald Trump comes with. And it seems like in Europe, they are finding the secret sauce, or close to finding the secret sauce, which is alarming to me. But what really will show if the secret sauce is found is what happened after this election was called in France, which was very surprising to me, and this definitely shocked me, which is, whoops, let's move this over just a touch. Perfect. Which is, now we have finished our segment on elections that have already happened. We're moving into the upcoming elections, and the first one is now the French legislative election. Macron called this one immediately after the results of the EU election. And just one thing I did want to mention about the EU elections is that one of the issues for, I think maybe the left in general, but specifically when it comes to EU-driven issues, is that for people on the left, the EU is like a nice thing to have, but it's not their ultimate driving political goal and ambition is to elevate the EU and see it succeed and, all that great stuff. Whereas for the right, the EU is a great political demon to be slain, and they are investing a lot of political capital and energy, and they see it as either holding back the West or whatever rhetoric you want to say, is that they see this as a great, like I said, evil to be beaten, evil to be fought, and this energy animates the anti-EU people a lot more than the pro-EU people. So really the only people that take or should take the EU elections seriously are the ones that are really into the institution, countries like France and Germany. So I guess I can see why France called this, why Macron called this election, although he really didn't need to, and he's taken a pretty big gamble by doing it, and for really no perceivable political reward. So we have very few polling numbers for this election, right? It was just called a couple days ago. But one of the things that we have seen emerge just recently, recent developments in the French election here, is the emergence of this red line. And we'll talk about them in a bit. But just so you guys know what political parties we're looking at, the dark blue, that's Marie Le Pen's sort of far right party. the National Rally. And then below that represents a new left-wing coalition which has emerged in French politics. This is the NFP, the New Popular Front, which is an alliance of various left-wing political parties in France brought together under a new banner. And this, like I said, is a very recent political development. I believe the FDP was actually called in response to this snap election, that all these left-wing parties are saying, okay, response to this, we're coming together so we can represent a real viable alternative. So this is something that's a very new development, and I'm excited about, and I thought was going to happen for a long time, because a lot of people have been saying the left wing in France is dead. It's not dead, it's just not united, and they need someone to come together and bring them together and give them a clear vision and a direction, and hopefully they can actually create a viable alternative to what we have, because this is literally what I'm talking about. We have that right-wing populism versus I always can't remember if it's Ensemble or En Marche, which is Macron's party. This is the yellow line that we see. And as you can see, it has been crumbling for quite some time. You can see the NFP is pulling higher than even Macron's party right now, which shows that not too many people are enthused about that ever diminishing and ever crumbling status quo, which Macron is very much tied to right now. Okay, it is Ensemble. Anyway, so we don't know much about what's going to happen here. We have a snap election kind of called out of nowhere, and most people think that this is Macron trying to shore up his popularity and show that he's still got it going on. But realistically, all of this could open the door is for him to use to Le Pen twice, because there's still going to be a presidential election. Legislative election is separate from the actual presidential election. It's very possible that in the upcoming presidential election, Macron gets beaten by Le Pen and the National Rally again. But to me, this is going to be the real bellwether of how far right European politics, particularly specifically continental politics, are headed, because France, very big country, powerful country, very embedded in the institution of the EU, and Macron himself also very wedded to the institution of the EU. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. We'll be following it closely. So our next upcoming election is going to be the United Kingdom general election. Hooray! And this was another snap election called by our boy Sunak. This one surprised me because there's really no reason for Sunak to do this. They have to call election at the end of the year anyway. That's the deadline. Anytime, I guess, between when the election was called and the end of the year is when he had to do it. Why now? I don't know. You wait to the end of the year, you still have the possibility of something turning around. But really, it's not looking good for the Conservative Party right now. And for a while, it seemed like this snap election was just going to be what everybody thought was going to happen is exactly what happened, which is that Labour is going to cruise to victory, the Conservatives are going to get crushed, and that's going to be it. However, we have had an actual interesting development. And now the question isn't going to be who's going to cruise to victory, because it still looks like Labour is very easily going to cruise to victory. It doesn't seem like much is going to stop it now. But now the main question is, are the Conservatives going to survive this election? Is the Tory party actually dead? I'm personally hoping yes. I've honestly been predicting the death of this political party for at least a decade now, to be quite honest. I've been wrong every single time. But maybe finally I'm going to be right, because I've seen the writing on the wall for the Conservative Party for, again, a very long time. But every single time they manage to snatch another life out of the hat, right? They manage to snatch another political life out. And it just shows the power of embedded political institutions, particularly in a country like the United Kingdom. When we're talking embedded, you're talking embedded. So why is the Conservative Party on life support right now? That is because Nigel Farage has announced that he is going to lead the successor to UKIP, which he led back in the day, which was eventually destroyed via political scandals and then rebranded as the Brexit Party, and then Brexit happened, and then now it's the Reform Party, and now Farage is at the head of this. This is the Reform Party. This is your far-right populist party. And particularly with a political icon like Farage in the UK, especially, very well-known guy, been around the political scene for decades now, liked, I think, by, particularly if you're a right-leaning person. Obviously, if you're a left-leaning person, not well-liked, but I think he's definitely more well-liked than Sunak. So anyway, with him coming in and bringing his political power to Reform, now there's a real question. Is Reform going to be able to overtake the Conservatives? And I think there's a real possibility they can overtake the Conservatives in terms of the popular vote. They might not be able to overtake them in terms of the seat count because, again, just embedded voter turnout, right? Voter institutions are very difficult to overturn. The Conservatives have a pretty efficient vote. They've got a pretty efficient vote machine. So they will probably, even if they don't get more votes than the Reform Party, they'll still probably end up with more seats. That being said, especially with Farage at the helm, I think it's quite likely that the Reform UK party will be able to overtake the Conservative Party. And we're already seeing this impact in the polls. One of the most interesting impacts, we've seen Labour also dip in response to Farage getting into the race. Obviously not enough to make any kind of impact in terms of what's probably going to happen, but it is interesting to see quite large downswing here. But let's move into the actual numbers, because we can see here that, let's go to, here we go, June 3rd. This is when Farage becomes leader of Reform UK. And as we can see, Reform right here, it's at the back. So we can see before he gets in there, they are lucky to be at 10%. Most of the time they're in single digits. After he gets in there, there's an immediate boost, right? Almost the next day, they're up at 17%. Just over a week later, we can see that Reform UK in the last poll, 17%, Conservatives at 18%. So they're already like neck and neck, nipping at the heels. This is not a good position to be in. If you are the Conservatives, this is a great position if you are Labour, because even if the Reform UK ends up taking some of the vote away from Labour, the fact that they're going to mostly be splitting votes with the Conservatives means that, especially in the first past the post system, that's going to benefit Labour substantially, as they're going to be the united left-wing alternative right now. We talk about the Lib Dems. They're actually doing surprisingly well, but they're nowhere in the near running to compete with Labour. Farage getting involved in the race is great news for Labour. It's great news for Reform. Terrible news for the Conservatives. Apparently, a lot of the Conservative MPs were extremely upset when they heard that Farage was going to announce. They were very upset that their leadership didn't do more to either placate him, give him some sort of deal, try and make sure he sat this one out. Because, again, if he does well and Reform continues to gain momentum, it could be the final nail in the coffin for the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom, a party which has shot itself in the foot at every single conceivable opportunity, yet somehow has managed to shamble on. It might have had its last shamble. We shall see. Again, this is one that is coming to a close. When is the end of this? I think it's July 4th. Okay, yeah. 3 weeks from now, we shall know what happens at the end of this one. And again, the one thing that I am personally looking for is if Reform is able to overtake the Conservatives. Okay, so let's end the show. We'll talk about looking into the big election in November. We are now just about halfway through the year, and things are still very close for this election. We're again here on Real Clear Politics. Trump has a lead of 0.04 percentage points, and this has, again, closed considerably in the last months. But the main thing which has happened since we have talked about this particular race is that Donald Trump was convicted on 34 counts by a jury in New York of forging business documents. At this point, we don't know the sentencing. That is supposed to happen in July as well. Though the main thing and the main considerations for this right now are obviously very political, in the sense that Donald Trump, is he going to stay the leader of the Republican Party? Is this going to have a big impact on the election? And unfortunately, my gut feeling on this one is going to be no. I feel like right now that these charges are not going to have a big impact on the election. These are the ones in relation to, if you guys don't remember, Stormy Daniels and paying off Stormy Daniels some hush money out of the Trump 2016 campaign funds. And of all the things that Donald Trump has currently been accused of and still accused of, this was certainly the most small potatoes of all of them. And when I first heard that they were bringing these charges forward, my thought is that this is to open the door. This is to open the door to more charges in the future. And in that sense, that I still think this might be the case for this particular instance we have before us. I think that having Donald Trump now officially declared guilty on these various charges opens the door to having him be declared guilty on more serious charges, because once you overcome that hurdle, it becomes easier to repeat the process. But in terms of this one, I just feel like people don't care. Talking to Canadians up here, right? And I live in the most conservative part of Alberta. They are very shocked that he can maintain his political campaign, that he can still maintain going forward, right? We have the Republican National Convention, both conventions for both parties, just over the horizon. And it's very possible they will just name Donald Trump. Most likely, in fact, that they will name Donald Trump, in my opinion, and that he will go into the general election. And part of the reason this hasn't moved at all is because right now everyone assumes that it's going to be a repeat of the last time. How many people are out there left that haven't made their minds up on Donald Trump or Joe Biden? How many people didn't make their minds up in the last election? How many people have already had their minds made up by this election? I just imagine that people who haven't decided what's going to happen is incredibly small. And right now, almost nothing can change that. And it seems like even a criminal conviction can't change that. We will see if there are some of the more serious charges and serious cases brought to trial, if that will change it. There's got to be a breaking point somewhere. But I think part of this resiliency is A, just how much the Democrats suck, and B, how much Joe Biden sucks, because they are seen as the representatives, again, of that ever-crumbling status quo, especially in the United States, especially in America. That Joe Biden is the avatar of the crumbling status quo. And lots of people don't want Donald Trump, but lots of people don't want that either. They don't want the choice to be between, again, this crumbling status quo and the crazy right-wing populist. Man, the Democratic Party needs new life injected into it so badly, but fucking vested interests cling on to that political institution like a cancer that just prevent it from moving into the future. The fact that you're anywhere close to Donald Trump is a pure embarrassment. It's so utterly embarrassing, especially considering everything we know about the guy, everything he's done, everything he's said. Just the fact that you are in any way even close, like he's winning, totally embarrassing, and it's utterly pathetic. So I feel like this race right now is going to continue to be basically a coin toss race right up until election time, unless something changes drastically, like Trump actually gets convicted on some of the more serious crimes, or Joe Biden collapses and is replaced with somebody else. Unless something like that happens, again, it's just going to be a nail biter, I think, right down to the very end. And basically, this entire election will be decided just exactly like the last two, on very slim sub 100,000 margins of people voting in swing states. And with that, I have finally come to the end of the big election extravaganza. It was a lot of fun. I wish I could have maybe had split this up in 2 episodes, but regardless, it's always good to go back to one of my favorite types of episodes to do. And I know a lot of you guys appreciate these kind of episodes too, these kind of election roundups and election forecasts. Not everybody is following the politics of Belgium be fair, I'm really not following it that closely either, but it's good to know and talk about it at least a little bit. So with that, I desperately need some water. I ran out of water quite some time ago, and my mouth is getting very dry. So with that, this has been Comrade signing off for now. Until next time, you guys take care.